It's that time of week again. Sunday, 6 p.m. And welcome to Steve's Place. And this week we're going to delve into the world of anti-gravity and free energy with the Searl device. And uh, and this will be a Searl replication. I knew Dr. Searl when he was still alive, and in fact, he's been at some of our conferences. And you can find some of his videos online at our on our website there. Uh, but before we get into that, I want to remind everybody we have a conference coming up. The Extraordinary Technology Conference, August 7th to 11th at the Crown Plaza Hotel in Albuquerque. Mark your calendar, August 7th to 11th. If you sign up, I believe we're at around 35% discount. And if you sign up a second person, it's an extra 5%. So register now. Well, you can get these super rates, which makes it super affordable. Every morning you can have breakfast. They will have a breakfast buffet for the attendees. And then they also in the evenings we'll have like a social time, and we always have like great food there, like pizza bars, pasta bars, taco bars, and everybody gets you can get a good meal. Anyway, so the only thing you have to worry about would be uh, the hotel rate, which is reasonable. It's in the 80s, and this is a 4-star hotel. So, like I say, sign up for the conference now and plan on it. If you plan, you can have a lot of good, opportunities to get cheaper rates like you on transportation and that. I expect gas to be going down this year. Um, you know, things are on the mend. So get signed up for the conference. We hope to have you there. And in the meantime, we have our YouTube channel. I can't impress on you how important it is to become a member of the Tesla Tech YouTube channel. You become a subscriber, which is free, and we have over 1,200 presentations up there at this time. Spans 3 decades. From the Extraordinary Technology Conference, Exotic Research, and Global Sciences. And I just finished working on the 2000. I'm getting ready to put those up. Conference. There's a lot of material up there you're not going to find anymore because, unfortunately, life being what it is, a lot of these people have passed away. So, like I say, go to the teslatech.info and you can click on the link there, take you right up to the channel and everything. Be sure to subscribe and be free. And I'd like to remind you, if you liked our program tonight, be sure to click on the thumbs up there and show your support, that way. And we really appreciate it. And it's like $9.99 to be a member of the channel. And all the funds here that we get for this goes back into keeping the conference alive and everything. So without further ado, let me bring on Isaiah. Isaiah has been working on sort of stuff for quite some time. I'll let you go ahead and fill him in, Isaiah.
Thank you, Steve. I just want to say thank you for having me on the show. And so I'll get started. Hello, everybody. My name is Isaiah Ritchey. I'm 43 years old, and a few things about myself. I was born in Oregon City and have lived in the Woodburn area my entire life. I have no formal college education except I graduated high school with a GED. I immediately went to work as an apprentice to become a general contractor. I'm married now to the most loving and supportive woman ever. I'm a general contractor and presently do remodel work all over the Willamette Valley. So when I was in my early teenage years, I became interested in the topics of free energy and anti-gravity. I followed a lot of Jean Louis Naughton's website back in the mid-1990s, plus reading anything I get my hands on through local library and online. When I was 14 years old, with the help of an electrical engineer, I made my first Tesla coil, plus several other magnetic devices. I had an interest in these type of topics basically all my life. Eventually, in my late teenage years, I just kind of gave up on inventing and exploring this type of field, but I always had a deep curiosity about it. When I was about 27 years old, I started having like a feeling or urging in my spirit, which I believe was from God, pushing me back to get started into inventing and creating things like what I was doing when I was a teenager. One morning in early January of 2008, I had a dream and I saw these interweaving linkage arms representing energy fields stemming from a central core. I had no idea at the time what this meant, but I went with my intuition and began researching free energy and over unity devices, having no idea what was going on in the world at that time with this type of technology. I quickly found that the videos that were put up in 2007 from John Searl, and that he basically had made a reemergence and had a mock-up device of his SEG unit. I was extremely fascinated and thought to myself that this would be an easy project to create and make work. It looked extremely simple, right? And within a few months of investigating this technology, I ended up finding one of the images showing the magnetic field of the device and was almost perfectly identical to what I had a dream about. And so what began in 2008 and making tons and tons and tons of mistakes and lots of successes has now grown and matured into my life's work. So this is just a brief history of John Searl's bio. The Searl Effect Generator, or SEG for short, it is a converter of ambient energy into coherent electrical current. John Searl was born on May 2nd of 1932 in Wantage, England, and he died December 8th of 2018 in the United States. His first generator was built when he was 14 and a half years old in November of 1946. Dreams are what brought the understanding of the law of the squares and were the key to all his knowledge. Each square represents a quantity of material, which I'll show in the slides here. One of the keys is to tap the rare earth element with a magnetic field. The dream said to slice the rollers into 8 segments, which I'll show here, similar to a transformer metal core. John Searl used AC and DC power when magnetizing his segments. It's the intersection of 2 magnetic fields. Negative electrons compress, causing a drop in temperature in the neodymium. So what you see here in the slide is a CGI image of how a Searl Effect Generator may look when constructed. And so the first one is just a single ring, and the lower one is a 3-ring system. The first ring is comprised of 12 rollers, the second one 22 rollers, the third ring 32 rollers. So the inside layer is composed of 99% pure neodymium. The second white layer is a Teflon, a dielectric. The third layer is the magnetic layer with the imprinting on it. And then the last layer is copper. The rollers all are comprised of the same materials. Underneath you see the numbers and the grid lines. And when you put the numbers in the right sequence, they all equal 34, which is the gram weight to the rollers. Each roller segment must equal exactly 34 grams. These are one of the cartoon images John Searl made representing the magnetic attraction of the rollers to the stator plate, and how he believed that the magnetism he was making represented frequency, just like light is different colors. He believed that he had used his magnetizing imprinting to isolate a frequency of magnetism. And so his attempt was to isolate a certain frequency in magnetism to tap the neodymium, the electrons in the neodymium. Here you see in this graph, each layer has a certain quantity, and those for the rollers, those are grams. For the stator, it's a different quantity. Each layer needs to weigh exactly the same within 1/10 of a gram. Here's a possible interpretation of the magnetic field. North on the top for the roller and south on the bottom, and points that face out perpendicular. Here is a picture of one of the roller segments. he had the iron filings put on it, and it showed individual poles, and it's something I've replicated pretty decently well, which I'll go into later with how I did that. So the top shows the stator and the roller against it, and one of the roller segments. Somebody fortunately did a computer enhancement and divided it into 34 equal sections. This is something I had a dream about. John Searl told me in the dream that it was a magnetic matrix. So here's where I began with my quest with recreating this, which I thought was going to be pretty easy. And yeah, that was many, many years ago. So here I was making the first electromagnetic pulsars and machining out the Teflon rods for the rings on the rollers. And December 21st, here's one of my first rollers. It didn't have any kind of special imprinting. It was more to see if I could even make it. And here, this is one of my YouTube videos. This shows the magnetic levitation of one of the rollers. When I spin it on the lathe, the stator, the copper stator band, it would push the way of the roller. The thing is, if you hold it parallel with the stator, it's a very, very light lifting effect. But if you hold it 90 degrees, it pushes up. It pushes away, repels it off with a whole lot more force. So the trick was to get perpendicular fields. So here's one of my roller segments. I used to hand grind these magnets before getting in touch with Chinese magnet manufacturers. Here's my very first attempt. It was very crude. But my very first attempt at making an SEG back in 2009. And there it is, a little bit more better color. Now these, I just used a plain neodymium magnet in the center, and then ABS plastic for the insulator, and then big ceramic magnets, which had huge gaps between them. That was just a very basic model. Here's a little bit better roller segment and magnets that I had hand ground out. Here's more testing of the roller. And this was the first trial runs with the electromagnetic pulsars. One of my first blueprints. This is my second shop I moved into in 2011. It was much smaller, but I started machining more Teflon parts. So this is some magnet rings you can still buy on Amazon, eBay, on the internet. They're magic rings you can wear, and they're all magnetized. They're neodymium, so they have a pretty decent feel about them. But I got the idea eventually to come up with making custom fields on these magnets. Now this was just a mock-up. It was never supposed to work. It was supposed to be like an Iron Man arc reactor size SEG. I eventually sold it to a guy. It was really cute. It was real small. This was the second ring on my SEG that I was attempting to make. And I still have that one presently, but it's not running or anything. So yeah, the second ring. And here I was fabricating out the parts for more rollers to do, I think, about 22 rollers. And this is a computer graphic I came up with for a basic blueprint design of one of the rollers. The red would be the neodymium red as it was like hot, electrically hot. And then you have the Teflon magnetic layer and then the copper layer and how they all fit together. These were some plans for one of the magnet manufacturers. This was something I was attempting to do, to build my own magnets from scratch using a press and getting some heat treatable steel. It worked okay. I was able to make my first magnet. And here's some plans for that manufacturer. And this is what they gave back to me to test. Now here I machined, I think, about 1,000 Teflon rings. So that was 2015, 2014. And here I was testing out the magic rings you could slip on your fingers to see how they rolled around the stator band. And there's another slide. This was my first and last example of making my own magnetic ring, and it worked pretty good. I didn't heat treat it. I didn't I didn't fire it or anything. I just pressed it with about 20 tons of force, and it turned out all right, except for the notch in the bottom, of course. So this is when there was a bit of a game changer with my research. I teamed up with a guy. His name is Russ Grease, and he has a YouTube channel called rwresearch.com. And I had this idea to use pre-magnetized magnets, which he demagnetized. And he used to live in California and had access to a magnetizing equipment. So I made these forms that you could slip a small ring magnet into it and then put it all together like you see in the lower frame, and then put the copper core down inside the cylinder. And then he would put it into the magnetizer, which resulted in changing the magnetic wave inside these little ring magnets. And it did quite successfully well. We were able to put custom designed fields and shape the magnetic field in the ring the way we wanted to. So he did 12 different examples, top and bottom, of the foam. And on this green film, you can see a little bit of a twitch in the ring. That was some magnet film with one of those rings on a gizmo to turn it very slowly, which I will demonstrate here in a little while. I still have one of these rings. That was the device, and it deflected the compass little by little as it would rotate. This is a little bit of the field. You can see it almost looks like smoke moving around as it rotates. So here's one of the copper stator bands I had machined for me, and I'm working on it to create another SEG. These are some of the magnets from China. They were a little bit too big, so I had to machine them down, which I did to get them to the right gram layer size. And so I got this within about 1/10 of a gram accuracy, maybe one gram. They're very, very close. Grinding them was a lot of fun. This is the copper stator, and I machined that down to within about 1 gram or 1/10 of a gram accuracy. And this is one of the roller segments, bought an extremely accurate scale, so I can machine it very accurately, get it down to the ideal range is 7 grams for the copper. And these are just some blueprints I came across working with a gentleman from India who had an idea about the magnetizing process. These are more my own blueprints, coming up with designing some machines for machining out the second ring and some possible magnetizing scenarios. 2017, one of the SEG units. This was like Gen 2. The inside layer the Teflon was too thick, and so I had to remachine and make a third version. But those are some of the blueprints underneath, representing the ratios of dividing it correctly for the amount of rollers on the stator. So this 2018, one of my first roller segments put together, and this third stator here, the weights were all correct, and I machined a nickel core for it right there. So the nickel, every layer here, the copper, the magnetized layer, the Teflon, and the nickel were all accurate within 1/10 of a gram of each other. So they had to base each weigh exactly the same weight. So those are all machined very, very precisely. This is an idea I came up with listening more and more to John Searl's talks and understanding the technology a little bit better. I didn't know how at the time, but I really wanted to be able to build the roller segments so that they were magnetized north and south through the thickness, but also have individual poles, ideally 34 poles that came out radially. So that is what kind of began the experimentation with the roller segments. So this is putting together the 12 rollers. And so the small silver discs were nickel 200, and then the copper bands and the Teflon rings. It took a lot of time to machine those out just perfectly. So this is one of the pieces of equipment I have here. It's a high capacity discharge for the magnetizing process that I sometimes do. I just do a lot of experiments. This one does about 10,000 volts at 10,000 amps. Here's some of the magnetizing equipment that I've put together, built all this equipment from scratch, tuned it. It's all built from scratch. The top one and the bottom one you'll see is one of the testing devices I replicated from Searl Magnetics. I looked at the equipment they made, so I made this one from scratch to test the roller segments as they rotate for magnetic field strength, what the field looks like. I can go really fast or just rotate it very, very slowly, and I'll show it here because I have it ready to go. I'll show it live here in a little bit. These are kind of like from the start to the finish of some of my magnetizing equipment. I was put some together for radial magnetizing and then magnetizing small little points onto the ring magnets, and others were just putting in all at once, magnetizing 6 points onto the magnets on the roller segments. I mean, here's some of the SEGs. So the one on the bottom is basically the Gen 2, and the one with the solid white Teflon ring is version 5, and the other two up at the top left corner is version 3 and 4. So this was one of our very first impressions. We weren't doing perpendicular. When I say we, it's a guy I'm working with. We were able to put impressions onto the roller segments, but they were either it would kill the field or it would knock like a peak into it. And so we were able to do precisely six points of magnetism, but it wasn't perpendicular. It was just up and down. So the goal was to make perpendicular fields on a ring magnet. This is one of the bigger electromagnetic coils. It was a double, so the ring magnet would fit inside of it through a cylinder and be positioned precisely in between each coil, trying to impress those points into it. It worked okay, but not as good as actually a single magnetizer. This was my the Gen 2 device that successfully got the electromagnetic pulsars on the outside to induce movement into the rollers, and it could do about 60-70 RPM. It was pretty slow. That was last year. It was a big win for me because it was the first time I actually got the device up and running. This was my first trial run with making the roller segments, the neodymium cores, to use pure neodymium with a resin binder, and it worked fantastically. They're not pressed with a press; they're just powder mixed with a little bit of resin, but they don't oxidize at all. The resin perfectly coated it, and then they dry up inside of the Teflon. So this is the Gen 3 device. I always count on these things. Gen 3, 2, yeah, Gen 3. Gen 3 device, and I can get the rollers going up to about 200 RPM on this. I don't observe any kind of unusual effects. There's no cooling. There's no electrical output. This was merely testing the motor capability to spin the rollers up to see how fast I could go on the RPM. This was a 34% or 37% neodymium core for the Gen 5 device, Searl Effect Generator device, which I'll be showing here in a little while. So I ordered that directly from China and eventually machined it to be within about 1 gram accuracy. And here I'm trying out some different magnetizing techniques using the rollers, north on the top and south on the bottom. Here's just some of the slices for the electromagnetic pulsars. I used layered steel, 24 gauge layered steel on the electromagnets. Instead of using solid horseshoe shaped electromagnets, I found that using the thin layered steel was a great enhancement. It would make the electromagnetic, the Gauss rating much higher, and could push the rollers a whole lot faster instead of a solid piece of steel. Here's one of the stator magnets that I was experimenting with on Gen 5. And that was one of my blueprints. So that was last year with the Gen 5 device. And here's an update. That's just a few weeks ago. So this one is up and running. Let's see, it does about 230 RPM. The only thing I'm going to have to change out is the magnets. They're radially magnetized, which has really created a lot more problems. So I'm going to go back to originally what I should have done. It was just an experiment of mine. So the stator magnets will be changed out to be north and south, top and bottom. And let's see, I'll keep going here. Such more to update. So this was a game changer for us on this research. Putting perpendicular fields on the ring magnets for the rollers. So this was a good success, and I was able to drill underwater using diamond core bits, drill holes into the ring magnets on the rollers and put perpendicular magnets into them, glue them in place, and put the copper bands and the Teflon and the neodymium layers inside of it. It enhances things a lot of ways. It makes the roller can do a much higher RPM before it flies off, even though these ring magnets are a lower grade neodymium. Also, it has some pretty unique looking magnetic fields, which I'll show here in a moment. So my idea was to do 17 instead of 34 points. It would not have fit onto the ring magnet. So I devised to do basically 17 because that's half of 34. So I was able to do 34 perpendicular magnets into the one ring magnet successfully. And this is just a custom-made ring magnet. I spoke quite a while with a guy who worked for Searl, and he has an image or a magnetic paper image of one of Searl's original magnets, and it looked a lot like this. So I just thought, what the heck, I'll just build it. And it has some interesting effects, which I'll demonstrate here. This is one of the imprinting designs I've come across, and it's one of the experiments I'm going to try with my own. The top, you see the blue and the red is drilling small holes into the stator magnets in relation to where the rollers fields are and lining them up so that the stator and the roller have, how would you say, intersecting fields. This is one of my ideas with the roller segments to basically have a high point and a low point for the magnetism. Even though you have your standard north and south on the ring, this is the perpendicular field, so you have a really strong section and then basically a 0 point. So here's some slides of the roller segments. On the far right, on the lower image, you'll see a Teflon layer with the neodymium core, and then one of these, let's see, the top section, it kind of looks like a rose petal or a rose with the 6 points, and then I have one with 17 points. So these are just more experimental rollers I'm doing. So basically, I'll take one of these segments and create 8 layers of them, and then see how it interacts on the stator when it spins, and then do that with the other 3 versions, just to test each roller out and see what the effects each one does. Like one will have 17, one will have 6, one has the notch. So each roller is a little bit different, and just testing out different ideas and techniques. There's an inside look of how the base, I like to call it the sprocket. The sprocket segments on each roller segment look with the magnets drilled into them. And so basically, you have the copper on the outside and the Teflon lock them in place. So what I have also is I'll have 4 top segments where the sprocket magnets will be facing like north out, and the bottom 4 will be facing south out. Okay, so that's the end of the photos. Now I want to show you guys, first off, some of the roller segments. I'm going to flip my camera around here. Okay. So these are some of the rollers I came up with. You can see this one is the one with the notch, and these are other custom ones. This one has the sprockets. And so here's a cutout of what I was trying to do. It basically is 34 points divided by 2 is 17. So it looks like a design that was given to me. And then let's see which one. So this is the sprocket, and this is the one with this pure neodymium. And this is the one that I came up with accidentally, and it has a dead zone in it. There's no magnetic field inside of that. But you can see here it has kind of a like almost a 6-pointed hex symbol. And I guess this one. Yeah, this is more of a normal roller segment. There's nothing special about it. And this is my sprocket magnet. I've been very happy with it and the way it holds on so well. So this has the 17 points. And this is the one that has 6.
Tomorrow, there will be lots
Sorry
of
about that.
clouds. The high of 50 degrees Fahrenheit and a low of 46 degrees.
Okay. And this is the gizmo I showed a few slides back. And this is one of the original magic rings that, turn this on, that first discovered I could alter magnetic fields. So it kind of looks like smoke. You see that the field will weave back and forth. That was artificially done by me and Russ. So the next I want to show is this is version 2, I think. And so before it all turns on, I got temperature sensors on several of the MOSFETs that run these. That way I can monitor temperature on the MOSFETs. I can monitor temperature on the coils. And this one's geared for the center nickel core. It was all experimental. But I got this going counterclockwise. It can do a max of about 200 RPM. So with this, I can dial in the percentage. I just use a Milwaukee battery. So these are just traditionally magnetized. There's nothing special about the fields. It was more to test out the motor capability of this system and more perfect the circuits. Let's see, in version 1 to really show. Oh yeah, so before that, this is the gizmo I made to test out the ring samples. This is one of the roller segments that's specially magnetized. There we go, camera. And we got a compass, so this is to show the magnetic field strength. It's Gauss meter, really nice one. So I turn this on, I can adjust the speed. But you see it has a compass deflection because it's picking up those perpendicular points. And if I use the magnet film, you can easily see the field really weaves around, which is exactly what I'm going for. So this holds the probe for the Gauss meter. And this is the version 5, I think it is. 4, 5. I can start labeling these. So this is a more enhanced drive system, more enhanced electromagnets. I have 20 winds of wire, not 20 winds, 20 strands of wire on each one, and each one has the exact gram weight of wire on each electromagnet. That way they're all identical. Circuits are all identical. Wound the inductor cores to make sure all the inductance level is the same. This one has the 37% neodymium core, the Teflon, the radial layer, which will be changed out soon, and then the copper band. So I'll turn this one on. I can only do about 2 rollers max on this system, unfortunately, because this field just doesn't allow, it doesn't like the way the rollers are. So. So this one could just go and go and go and go, but the only problem is the ring magnets on these rollers, they're not all that strong. So it tends to hit this point where it gets real quiet and then it flies off. So with new magnets that I'm creating, the sprocket design, it is overcoming that from what the tests are showing. And then improving these magnets and putting the sprocket and the wave pattern onto them like I'm doing with the rollers. So yeah, it's little step by little step, making a whole bunch of mistakes, but moving forward with it. This uses, it's all cordless, wireless. I have a Milwaukee battery powering the whole system, and then the motor speed control. The next version I'm working on is using no electromagnets. This is just a very simple, basic concept of one of the ideas I had. It's basically a carousel. The SEG stator will fit in here. You can fit the rollers onto it here, and these magnets mounted in on the perimeter will gently push the rollers around. So that will ease up. One of the problems I found is the pulsing knocks the rollers instead of just gently rotating around and spinning. It actually kicks them, which has become kind of a problem. So with this, this gently just pushes them constantly. The motor can do up to 1900 RPM, because the ideal RPM range I want to get is between 500 and 600 RPM, hopefully where it'll show the any kind of effects the SEG has to offer. Let me flip this camera around. So that is basically it in a nutshell. A little bit more to say here. So let's see here. A little bit more about my device. It's modeled after the Searl Effect Generator device. John Searl is known all over the world as the inventor of the Searl Effect Generator. It is a pure magnetic device consisting of a series of rings, which I showed you. He called them plates. And the cylindrical rollers, the ones that go around, they all consist of the same elements as the stator. My system at this moment uses a series of sophisticated electromagnetic pulsars using MOSFETs and layered transformer steel for the horseshoe-shaped magnets. The magnetic field holds the rollers tightly to the copper plate, and at the same time, ideally, with experimentation and understanding, as the rollers spin around, it'll induce movement of the electrons moving through the layers from the center core of neodymium to the outside layers, the copper. And basically what Searl says, the intersection of two magnetic fields, one radial and another axial or vertical. And so it's the intersection of these two fields that creates a magnetic wave, which I've seen and which I showed here. The generator uses perpendicular fields located on the rollers and the rings to create a wave pattern. John Searl originally designed his using AC and DC fields, but with what I've learned through the years researching other creators and replicators of this device, especially Rodin and Goshen, they used perpendicular fields like I'm doing with sprocket magnets, and they had some pretty unusual effects with their device. The magnetic fields hopefully will induce a flow of electrons from the neodymium core through a system of rotating magnetized components that I'm also doing too, so that the electrons could be collected, compressed, used, and recycled when the magnetic forces are in motion. My device contains all nearly identical elements as the original device he built, and is one of the best replicas next to Searl Magnetics. That's basically my presentation in a nutshell. I want to just reach out and again, thank you, Steve, for having me on the show. I also wanted to thank what I believe is the one who's led me to all this is Lord God. And I want to especially thank my wife for being very patient with me, extremely supportive through all this research, and also my friend Jared, you know who you are. You are an answer to prayer, and I just thank you for all your help on this project. So thank you for having me here.
Well, thank you for being here. And I don't know if you can see the comments or not. We don't have any questions just yet. Um, but I'd like to mention that you are going to be at our conference and doing demonstrations somewhat, right? And
Mhm.
in August. So I encourage everyone to come to the conference, because that's the thing about conferences, you get to actually meet people, to see people face to face, sit down, um, share a meal. You know, you don't get to do that on the internet. And and you just have to really watch out. What you're doing here. And here you go. And Mike notice that if you need help making a diagram, 1MK, let me know. I guess so. Somebody might
Also,
know. And
Steve, like I told you, if anybody wants to reach out to me, my email address should be on the my name, so and anybody can reach out to me, email me with questions. I welcome it.
I don't know why the names aren't showing up right now.
Oh, okay.
But if you go to the description of the talk, like go to Steve's place on playlist, and you click on his lecture there. In the description, at the bottom of the description, there's uh, an email. Sorry, senior moment here. There's emails there, and we do give out the emails and that. So there you go.
There we go.
Isaiah Ritchey at gmail.com. Um, the big thing is remember how to spell the name Isaiah. Okay, here you go. From Maria, could the smaller magnet rings be worn for health enhancing benefits?
Glad you brought that up. I can offer two things I've learned about these magnets. To answer your question, I don't know for that specific use. But one of the claims Searl stated was that when the device was in motion and rotating, it would, what was it? I believe it would put electrons or negatively charged electrons into the air and would basically knock out viruses, bacteria. They would drop to the ground, kind of like how you would have an ozone generator in your house. He knows that effect of skin and tissue would heal up much quicker. He wanted that his device could be put into hospitals and places where germs and viruses were very frequent in the air, so that the ionization of the air would knock them out. So there is a possibility these magnets could be used for healing or health. I don't know.
Okay, and there's from Crypto Alchemist. Have you experienced loss of temperature or cooling effect when running it? And do the spinning magnets levitate?
Good question. I have observed that they lightly do levitate, and I have reached them. It's about a 230 RPM is when the roller wants to lift off. The only issue I have with that in my system is the electromagnetic pulsars are so close that it doesn't have the freedom of movement to venture off. It hits them. So that's where I'm working on a system, the Gen 5 device, where the roller can literally float in the air. I know it will float because I can take that stator off, put it on my lathe, and spin it at about 1400 RPM, and it pushes the roller away. So that is something that I will be testing, and I want to see it really just float. The cooling effect, I haven't experienced that yet, and simply because I haven't hit the right RPM. The RPM range on that is a little over 500. I was in contact with a guy in Russia. His videos have, he removed them or they were taken down, but other people have copied them, reposted them. So his name is Mr. Delphin, Delfin. He made a series of about 27 videos of his attempt at replicating Searl's device, and it was a really good attempt. He put probably about a year and a half worth of work into it. The second to his last video, which I think was part 25, he bought a solid piece of neodymium and put it in the core of his device, spun it up to right over 500 RPM, And within about 2 minutes, it dropped to negative 17.2 C. So it really went cold, and he stopped the device and wiped off frost off the top of the neodymium. It was starting to cool through the layers, through his insulator layer and out to the aluminum band he was using. It was cooling things down very quickly. So he is one instance I know. I know Russian and Godin claimed that their device in the 90s would cool the air down and itself would get cool. So there's 2 instances I know of independent researchers experiencing a cooling effect. Mine so far I haven't, because I don't have I haven't gone up to that high RPM yet, but is approaching. This next version hopefully can reach 500 RPM and maybe up to 700 or 800.
Well, do you have a problem with these magnets flying off?
Yes, because with these 2 systems, the stator magnets and the roller magnets I have they're all N32, and I haven't used any higher grade magnets yet. I'm having them manufactured. I have a set of N55 rings for the rollers, but I'm having another set for the stator made starting next week. That'll be N52. So that'll be a higher grade magnet. The other thing is I still have yet to get sprockets made with higher power magnets. And the other thing that they're flying off is because there's almost no space between the electromagnets and the rollers. So when they start to want to levitate off and have a nice cushion of floating, they smack into the electromagnets. So that is one of my issues.
Well, do you have you considered using a shield there, like a plexiglass shield or something, between you and the device when you're running it, or
No,
for safety?
not yet. I mean, they're only doing 200 RPM, and when I say they fly off, they don't fly out of the device. They stay. Maybe easier to show. They stay in the device, but they just clank to each other. Clank. Let's see if I can switch this. There we go. So they'll just jam up inside here. They won't they'll just crisscross, that kind of thing. So as you can see, the spacing is very, very small, sometimes 1/16 of an inch to 1/8 of an inch. So they don't have a lot of room to come out and levitate. I'm only looking for like a 1 or 2 millimeter levitation, but these get in the way. And so what I'm working with this device is that I'll have ample room to be able to come out to float and be able to determine what that distance is and what speed I can get on it. So this is basically a carousel. You have the motor under here and the top unit. So yeah, I'm venturing away from the electromagnetic pulsars. The other thing I've noticed is that these pulsars kick the rollers. They push them whenever they go by, so they're kicking them every time instead of just a smooth rotation. That's one of the issues I faced with this system.
And we have another question here. So this invention could theoretically be used as an air conditioner for the home, with more testing, of course.
Yeah, it's a very interesting effect. It's only one I've seen with Mr. Delphin, is that it did cool very, very rapidly and down to 17.2 C at 500 RPM. And all he is doing is rotating magnets around magnets. He didn't have any perpendicular fields like I'm doing. I believe his system was only using mu metal with designs cut into it around his ceramic magnets. His was very simple, but yeah, you could theoretically use it as passing air through the system as it cools, just magnets rotating around magnets. No chemicals, no pressurized systems, just magnets around magnets.
Did you say where the heat went?
From what I've understood, it takes the ambient energy, including heat, and converts it into electrical power or cools it. He wasn't testing for that, at least what I saw, he wasn't testing for electrical output. He experienced a cooling effect, and it was just converting ambient energy, which heat is ambient energy. It was converting that. And I don't know where he's at. His email address is gone. His website's all gone. His YouTube channel is gone. I wish him the best. He used to talk to me. We used to email each other back and forth. But since about 2 years ago, he's just gone.
Well, maybe he's no longer with us.
It
There's a
could
lot
be
that's going around these days. You know,
stuff happens.
yeah, well, unfortunately, I have too many of my friends have dropped off the radar, and you find out later they're no longer with us. You know, um,
It's the same story with a lot of people from Searl. I mean, John Searl died in December 8th, 2018. How was it? Bradley Lockerman, the film producer, as far as I understand, he's gone too. And then John
Really?
Thomas, yeah, at least on the internet, that's because he passed away a few years ago also, the film producer.
well, John Thomas, he's still around, isn't he?
John Thomas, I hope he is. I would love to meet him. Jason Verbelli and Fernando Morris are still alive, doing well.
Yeah. Okay, and here's a comment here. Endothermic reaction equal no violation of the laws.
That's what I believe too. There's no violation. It's as much as violating the laws of thermodynamics as a water dam is. It's basically just using the electrons in the environment and turning them into a coherent form of electricity. There's nothing crazy about it, from my understanding.
And then there's a comment here about when you do the phone thing, if you can flip it on the side 90 degrees, maybe you can get like a broad view, a wide view as opposed to when you're showing the equipment.
Did that go better? Like I'm just going sideways.
Equipment of mine, I don't know. So anyway, here's a question for you. Are you familiar with the flyback effect?
I've heard that term, but no, I'm not super familiar with it. No.
Okay. Yeah, my brain is.
So it may have something to do with, it is one of the things that me and my friend who's working on this, one of the reasons we're designing this carousel to be different than Paul Murad's and Roshan and Godin is because they allowed their rollers to be locked in space with the carousel. They had no freedom of movement to contract and expand at their own design. So that is one of the things that I'm doing with my system is those rollers, just like Searl stated, is they figure out where they want to sit on the stator plate, not where I want to choose for them. So that's my own intuition on the system, is to let them figure out where they need to, how they need to contract and expand by themselves. We feel that, I have no testing in this yet, but we feel that it has something to do as the rollers are spinning in one direction, as they're compressing and expanding, because they're repelling each other, that they create a secondary wave going back the other direction. That's just our intuition telling us this. And with this carousel buildup, we're hoping to be able to test that theory that there's a secondary wave being created. But that'll only come with, once it gets built. I'm having a design being 3D printed eventually soon. And once that's up, we can spin it up to 500 RPM, 600, 700, 800 RPM, and we could test that to see if there is a secondary wave the rollers are creating as they spin clockwise.
Okay.
So it may have something to do with flyback.
Here, Mike describes the inductor field collapses and reverses polarity, aka flyback. And I think he's saying that what you just described is flyback. It's a flyback effect. And one more here. If the rollers have rising class when they collapse, the polarity flips. Yeah.
I've seen that on the testing device. The polarity constantly flips as the roller rotates. I see it on the compass here, that when I rotate, even at like 9 RPM or however slow, as long as it's rotating, that polarity is just going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth.
And okay, it says polarity flips as long as it's not oscillation instead of pulse. Okay. Anyway, like I say, you will be at the conference, and I know you're going to have a great time there. And I think everyone who's listening should make a point to try to make it at least, you know, and meet you.
That
And
would be great.
a comment here: AC wave won't produce flyback. DC pulse will. Okay. So, and I think the interaction at a conference you just don't get anywhere else. Really. I mean, I know I
I'd
found
love to.
myself getting trapped in this place, and here's a comment from Toby saying, very interesting. Thanks, Steve. Toby was one of the original founders of the International Testing Society back in 1984.
Wow.
And so he's a long time.
Wow.
So, okay. And AC is oscillation, DC can be constant or pulsed. Okay. So, is there any more questions out there related to the Searl effect? We do have Searl's videos from back when he was alive, when he attended our conference back in I think it's like 2015 or something like that, around that area. It's been a while, you know. So, okay. So, anything you'd like to close with?
Boy, I think I kind of went through everything. Thanks again for having me on this show and allowing me to show what I've been doing and my technology here. And again, anybody wants to reach out with me or questions or any insights, I look forward to it. And my email address was shown there. So yeah, thanks for having me on the show, Steve. I really appreciate it.
And thank you for being here. And like I say, I encourage everyone, if you liked what you've seen here and everything, be sure to go out there and give the old thumbs up on there. It really helps us out, The more thumbs up that we have out there, the more the algorithms pick up that YouTube has. And YouTube does get kind of picky. Oh, do you have any good books to recommend on this?
One of the better ones, I believe it has a lot to do with Roshan and Godin, was I think it's called the Anti-Gravity Handbook. Most of my research has just been like the last 15 years. I mean, scouring the internet constantly since about 2008, which back then there was a lot more stuff available. Coincidences constantly happen in my life where I've met a lot of people involved with technology. I mean, one guy worked with Searl back in the 90s for 6 years. I interviewed him, talked with him. He gave me a bunch of his research. A lot of it has just been coincidences, right time, right people, right place, over and over and over. I mean, this has been my story. Is I literally run into dead ends on this technology, and I pray, and the answers come. That has happened over and over and over and over and over through the last 15 years.
Okay, and I'd like to ask one last question here. We talked earlier about the Hammer device. For those people who don't know it, it's like cones with magnets in the cone, and it's like magnets that are forced north to kind of levitate them and cause them to spin. And how would that compare to the stuff you're doing with the Searl work?
Two different devices. They both have similarities that they're magnetic. The basic Hamel device, at least the one I worked with, and I built when I was 14, it was, it had the top ring magnet, a smaller ring magnet, and a ball bearing. It used rotating fields, and you could lightly tilt the above one just a little bit, and the bottom one would whirl much faster. I haven't experimented with that since I was 14. So that was about 29 years ago. It's a very interesting device and something eventually I will play around with one day.
Okay. Well, with that, I'm gonna go ahead and call it a night and remind everyone, we do have our conference coming up. Get signed up for that. If you'd like to speak at the conference, contact me. Drop me a line at steve@teslatech.info. And with that, I hope to see y'all next week.